Hi, you rates. Welcome back to another podcast. We are going to be looking at Victorian context as you will be studying the speckled band. So I thought we could start off by looking at why was Sherlock no why was Sherlock Holmes so popular during the Victorian era?
Hello, so it's Miss Thornhill here. I think that one of the reasons why Sherlock Holmes was so popular during the Victorian era because he was a crime detective. Crime novels were fairly new, so he was one of the first literary detectives. Victorians were obsessed with crime. They found it really interesting. It was like a form of entertainment, especially a murder. Victorians loved a bit of death
And a
and
good murder story, didn't
yeah,
they? Yeah.
definitely. Yeah. Also, Sherlock Holmes was an interesting detective because he had amazing observational skills.
So he was really good at looking at something and coming up with an inference for it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
his stories are like puzzles and they draw the audience in.
Yeah. Also, since this was based in the Victorian era, do we all know who the Queen was at this time?
Queen
Yes, well
Victoria.
done. It was Queen Victoria. So, what do we know about Queen Victoria? When her husband died, what colour did she vow to wear?
So she vowed to wear black for the rest of her life, which she did. And interestingly, one of the main characters in the Speckled Band is a lady called Helen Stoner, and she is also all dressed in black because she's mourning the death of her sister who has been killed in mysterious circumstances. Now, it would have been unusual in Victorian times for a woman to leave her home early in the morning and to go into a stranger's house. She doesn't go to the police. She goes to see Sherlock Holmes, and the reason for this is
She
because
doesn't trust the police.
Yes.
lots of Victorian people didn't trust the police because lots of crimes in Victorian times
Went unsolved.
went unsolved, and that's probably because they didn't have the technology such as DNA and fingerprinting that we have today.
To
Yep.
be able to work out the crime.
Yep. And finally, let's just touch on what women's roles were in the Victorian era. So, what were women seen as in the Victorian era? Were they allowed to leave the house by themselves?
I think
No.
No, what was happening at the time that they weren't allowed to leave?
I think they probably were allowed to leave their house on their own for things like going to the shops
Yeah.
to get food, going to the market because they had to look after their families. That was
Yes.
their primary role. The man was still seen as the breadwinner, and the woman was the carer and the mother.
And that's what is really interesting at the beginning of the story. You'll notice Helen Stoner was out early in the morning going to visit Sherlock Holmes, who she didn't know. So she's going to visit a strange man early in the morning, which would have been seen as really bizarre.
That shows
Shows her
her
desperation.
desperation, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
Because we learn at the start of the story that her sister has been murdered and she's desperate to find out who did it.
Yeah.
And she knows that Sherlock Holmes is well known in London. He has a brilliant mind, he has brilliant observation skills as well. So she knows that he will probably work out the puzzle and solve
Yeah.
the mystery.
Thank you for that. So I think we've given you enough to work with now. So you've learned a lot about Victorian context. When you are listening to this, you do have a few questions that need to be answered. Yep, answer those questions for your teacher and then you can upload them onto class charts. Thank you for listening. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.